the Contractor's Secret Weapon weekly podcast with your hosts, Dave Negri. This program is dedicated to helping contractors, remodelers, painters, roofers, roof cleaners, and business owners in the construction industry gain an unfair advantage over the competition. This program supplies you with information that the competition doesn't even know exists. This session brought to you by ContractorsSecretWeapon.com.
All right, let's get going here. Hey, today, let's say thanks for being with us. Thanks for stopping by and listening to the show today. And I just want to introduce everyone to our guest today, Rocky Romanella. He is been around for a while. He's in New York City, moved to New Jersey, worked for UPS, worked for other companies, and then he started, because he said he didn't want to follow his wife around ShopRite, 360 Management Services, which took the utilization of his 40 years of experience in leadership, and he wrote a book, Tighten the Lug Nuts, The Principles of Balanced Leadership, and explores why true leaders can add value as a trusted advisor, mentor, and visionary who uses a process approach to lead the organization and its people to new levels of success. So, Rocky, I'm just glad you could be with us today and share your expertise, share what you've learned in your history of leadership. And I love the title of your book, Tighten the Lug Nuts. And I want you to introduce all of our listeners to Joe
Scafone.
Yeah.
Oh, Dave, thank you very much. And Joe's a good friend of mine, and as you know, and if you would like, I would tell you the Joe Scafone story. So
go ahead.
So Joe is this person who says he knows everybody. So my friend says to Joe one day, Joe, you say you know everybody. How about Derek Jeter? You know Derek Jeter? And this is certainly when Derek Jeter was playing for the Yankees. And Joe says, of course I know Derek Jeter. Come on, let's go to Yankee Stadium. So they go to Yankee Stadium, and they're in the crowd, and Derek Jeter looks over and says, "Oh my God, Joe Scafone's here!" And he walks over and he starts talking to Joe Scafone. So with that, my friend is pretty impressed, but he says, Derek Jeter, I wonder if he knows the president. So he walks over and says, Joe, that was pretty impressive, but do you know the President of the United States? And so Joe says, yeah, of course I know President Obama. This is when President Obama was in office, and he says, come on, let's go to the White House. Let's go see if we can see the president. So they get in an airplane, they fly to the White House, and the president's given this given his press conference. He looks up and says, hold everything, folks. Joe Scafone's here. So Joe walks up and he says hello to him. And my friend's like, wow, this is impressive. He knows Derek Jeter. He knows the president. I wonder if he knows the Pope. So he says to him, hey, Joe, this is impressive, but do you know Pope Francis? He goes, Pope Francis and I go way back. So he says, come on, let's go to the Vatican. So they get on an airplane, they fly over to Rome to Sunday morning, and the Pope has his big audience, and the Pope looks out, and my friend says, hey, I don't think he recognizes you, Joe. I don't think you know him. He goes, look, if I go up there and he turns and recognizes me, will you believe I know the Pope? My friend says, absolutely. So he walks up, Pope turns around and goes, Mano no me, Joe Scafone's here, and he gives him a big hug. But with that, there's this commotion in the crowd, and my friend fainted. So they run over to him and they said, are you okay? Are you okay? He goes, look, I was impressed when the Pope knew you, but when the guy next to me said, who's that next to Joe Scafone? I couldn't believe it. So Joe Scafone is that person that knows everybody, and Joe Scafone's that person that knows a little bit about everybody. And so I've used Joe Scafone, Dave, throughout my career as someone who could prompt thoughts and suggestions. And, I never wanted to be in a meeting or sitting in that spot and saying to someone when they presented me this idea or something important that they wanted to cover and say, well, I don't know if I would do it that way, or I think you could do it differently, or maybe you should look at it a different way. I would always say, hey, what would Joe think? You think Joe would do it that way? What would Joe Scafone say? So Joe Scafone became this sort of person that everybody associated with and we had fun with, but it was a way to be able to have that conversation with people and not be threatening or feel like you were cutting off conversation. So when I wrote the book, I did not want to write the book in first person by any stretch of the imagination. Because nobody wants to get lectured to, and no one wants to read a book that says, well, I would do it this way, or I think you should do it this way. So the book really is written, by Joe Scafone. So Joe talks about his career and some of the lessons he's learned throughout his 40-year career, and uses a lot of stories to help tie those lessons with stories and analogies to make them clearer, but also gives you a good chance to laugh a little.
Well, and like we talked a little bit earlier before, you've read a lot of books, and I've read a lot of books, and the ones that have kept me, and probably the ones that I've learned the most from, are the ones that were presented as stories.
Right.
because there's more to it. It's just you see the thought behind it, you see the process, you see the emotion. Everything's there when you get drawn in by a story.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and then you can relate, right? Because as someone's, talking to you about a concept and then relating a story or giving you a good analogy, you can actually see people start to have those aha moments. Oh, okay, I can see how this works. I see how I can apply it, or maybe I can see what I could have done differently or done better. But it's also a way it's non-threatening. It's not an evaluation. It's not a criticism. It's an observation more.
Yeah, and I know it's kind of funny as you talk, and you from New Jersey and New York, and your last name is not Greek, it's Italian. So how is that, and I come from a big Italian family myself. So how has that influenced your life and to bring you about to where you are today and helped you along with your book?
Well, thanks for asking. So the book really is a sort of a thanks and dedication to my dad from my early years, who since passed away, and then my wife, who really was a tremendous influence throughout my business career. Raising 4 children, we moved 10 times across the country with UPS, and so 4 kids in tow, and so she was wonderful. With I couldn't have got to where I am today without her. I mean, it was just a great team, and so I think that growing up in a family and growing up in this environment where you had strong ethics. I mean, my dad used to always say to us, "You can disagree, but you can't be disagreeable." So on that Sunday afternoon at the kitchen table, we had our moments and we had our lively discussions, as you know. But at the end of the day, nobody, we may have arguments here, but nobody leaves this table and no one else is allowed to say anything bad about us,
Right.
That kind of idea. So you grew up in this family environment of where, you were able to talk and disagree, but never be disagreeable. And my dad, instilled in us some, I think, values that were so important. I mean, he's always saying to us, "Is what you do when no one's watching that counts."
Yeah.
And you think about that today, that's so important. And then the other thing, it's funny. When I moved throughout UPS, people said, "Well, how come you moved so much?" And I never really had intentions, Dave, of moving. But when I graduated high school, a friend of mine, Mike Coffey, got a job at UPS, and so a few of us went over to the UPS and we started unloading trailers part time as I worked my way through college. My dad told me 2 things. He said, the first thing is learn your job and then learn some more. So look around, and if somebody else knows a little bit more than you do, you better learn how to know a little bit more than everybody else. So learn your job and learn some more. And then the second thing he told me, which is what really kind of guided me through all these moves, is he said, look, whatever they ask you to do, say yes, and then say thank you. And so I was always guided by those principles. And, they asked me to move to Chicago, and it's like, okay, I mean, all I could hear was my dad saying, say yes, and then thank you. Okay, I'm in. Let's go. And so, we had some interesting moves. We started in Jersey and Chicago, New York City, Syracuse, New York. And then we moved to Des Moines, Iowa. Now, picture this Italian guy running around Des Moines, Iowa. The number one question I would get is, are you in a witness protection program? I mean, Rocky Romanella in Iowa. But it was a great place to live, wonderful people. Our family really enjoyed our time in Iowa. And we went to Southern California, Atlanta, Philly, and Atlanta. So we had some great moves together as a family, but really always guided by that principle by my dad of, just say yes and thanks.
Yes and thanks, because it's going to be a journey. It's kind of funny. A couple of weeks ago, I was at a seminar, and the guy that was doing the seminar said, "All right, this is the only response that I want you to make. Yes. Just say yes. Just say yes and figure out how to do it along the way, because you'll be surprised on what will happen when you say yes."
That's very true. I mean, people used to always say to me, like, what was your biggest concern as you were moving through an organization and, kind of, moving up the ladder? And I would say my biggest concern was they're going to figure out that I'm the guy they promote. It's like, that's who Rocky Romanella is. What? Because you always said yes, and the company and always had more faith in me than I had in myself, and I used to always be like, "Are you sure I'm the guy? And there's nobody else in this big company, 400,000 people. You don't think you can do a little better than this? No, you're the guy." So
what if they find out, right?
Oh my God, what if they figure it out? It's that little Italian kid. What are we thinking here? But I would always say, and that's one of the things I talk about in the book, is that as a leader, you have to believe in your people. many times until they're ready to believe in themselves, and I think that's so important. And you really see it in entrepreneurs, right? Because they have to believe in themselves when many people and many other people don't, right? Because they're making that investment. They're taking that step out. In one of my assignments, I was very fortunate, and I was very lucky inside UPS. I did a lot of non-traditional things in UPS, and we acquired mailboxes, et cetera, and then rebranded it to the UPS store. Well, one of the most exciting parts of that job was, we're a completely franchisee-owned network. It's over 5,500 stores, all of which are independently owned by franchisees. Now, some franchisees own multiple stores, but there are no company-owned stores. And I got to tell you meet some of the finest people, that with the entrepreneurial spirit. It's hard not to walk away and say, wow. I mean, you love their energy, you love their enthusiasm, the commitment that they've made. I mean, they've basically taken everything they own and kind of slid it across the table and said, I'm all in. I mean, so I think that really taught me a lot, and I felt like I was so lucky to work with and deal with and be part of that network and meet so many wonderful entrepreneurs. I have such great respect for the entrepreneurial spirit and entrepreneurs. Yeah,
and so that must be, I mean, when you transitioned out from the corporate to now you're the entrepreneur, was that a mindset challenge a little for you?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, I mean, you're it. I mean, you're the chief cook and bottle washer. And I think the thing that served me well is that I've never been afraid of work, and I've always, loved the grassroots and, get down to the front line. So no matter how, high I got at UPS or even in my CEO role at Unitech, I relished the opportunity to get out and talk to people and touch things. So that's always been great. And so when you start your own business, as you know, and your audience knows better than anyone, is that, you really have to have, on those tough days, faith in yourself. I mean, there's, you have that week when, wow, I think 3 pieces of business are going to break, and do I have enough assets and enough resources to handle all 3 of them? And then that's on Monday. By Friday, no one signed the document or no one signed the contract with you.
You're going, what happened?
Oh my God. Well, and really, in big businesses, everybody talks about P&L responsibility, profit and loss responsibility. I know I've had a business unit that's P&L responsibility. Well, if you want P&L responsibility, franchisees taught me the ultimate P&L responsibility is at night you hit the cash register, and the cash register door opens, and you pay your vendors, you pay your people, and what's left is for you. That's the ultimate P&L responsibility.
Yeah.
When you're in a big company, you believe you do until, you've got this big corporate function behind you, and that's you understand it, but you don't have that same P&L feeling like an entrepreneur does.
Well, no, because he's eating. I mean, and when you're the CEO and you're eating every day, when you're the entrepreneur, you're going, am I going to eat this week?
Right. No, that's right. I mean, that's why we have such great admiration for them when you really understand and you get to meet those entrepreneurs. I mean, it's the lifeblood of the country, and the lifeblood of business.
Yeah. So as a respected business executive, keynote speaker, CEO, how would you describe, the overall experience of writing your book? Because I know that's a lot of people think, I'd like to write a book, but I could never write a book. So I'm sure those are some of the thoughts that went through. How did you? How was that process for you? How was that experience?
Well, I got to tell you, it's probably one of the scariest, right? Because you sit there and you're staring at the piece of paper or your Word on your computer there, and you're thinking, well, do I have enough to even write a book? And then if I did write a book, who would read it? Those kind of things. And so. So you go through that process, and then you have to take a step back. And for me, at least, I took a step back and said, well, what am I trying to accomplish here, and why do I really want to do this? I mean, and so what it really came down to is I wanted to pay tribute to my dad and my wife, and talk a little bit about them and kind of a thank you there. And then, to me, I've always felt that the mark of good leadership is what's your legacy? Is the place a little better after you were there? Did you leave it a little better than you found it? And so I began to write the book with that in mind. I really want to write a book that leaves it a little bit better, leaves the place a little better than I found it, that people can utilize some of the thoughts and some of the ideas. And so I began to kind of write down, kind of an outline that was key topics like, the tighten the lug nut story. The tighten the lug nut story really highlights that if you don't tighten the lug nuts, at the time the lug nuts are loose, they're important. But if you don't tighten them and the wheel comes off, it just became urgent.
Yeah.
And, and if you allow important things to become urgent, you can only handle so many urgent things in life, whether it's in business or in your personal life. And so many times you see people just not tighten the lug nuts. They could have walked over and tightened them real quick and never had to worry about them again. Instead, they let them fester or loose, or you could say procrastinate. And next thing you know is now they've got all these different balls to juggle, and they have 3 or 4 urgent things, and they get overwhelmed. And you hear people say things like, "I never get lucky. Things don't go my way. I can't catch a break." And you're thinking, well, these things all happen because you didn't tighten the lug nut. So that was a story that was important to me. Of course, I'm a balanced leadership to me is a huge concept, and one that I've managed and kind of worked to. And it's sort of my, kind of mantra as a business leader is, that when you make business decisions, you have to be in balance. And the 3 key constituents are your customers, people, and share owners. And as I was in decision-making processes, I would try to teach my people, well, think like a customer, feel like a valued individual, but act like an owner. So if we're going to build this new product, who's the customer? What are we solving it for? Right. Let's put ourselves in the customer's shoes. And then I would say, well, let's feel like valued individuals. Is there training we need for our people? Who's going to communicate that with them? We're starting this new product. They have to execute the product, but we never do anything to help train them or develop them until the product's already developed. And so now they're behind the curve. Yeah. So, and then I would say, if you own this business 100%, what I learned from the entrepreneurs, if this was your candy store, would you do this? And you would be amazed, Dave, how many times you'd sit in these meetings and people would have all these great numbers and PowerPoint presentations, and it would get down to the question, well, if you owned this candy store, would you do it? No, I'm not really quite sure. Well, look, if you don't think you would spend your money, why would you, why are we spending our money? So it's that balance of thinking like a customer, feeling like a valued individual, and acting like an owner. And that's sort of a core for me. And so that gave me quite a few chapters as I used examples throughout my career on how to, explain those concepts and the examples that I used throughout my career to help people understand, customer, people, and stakeholders or share owners. So
yeah. So here's a question, because I know a lot of people that listen to the show are, small business owners, and how do you, in your leadership process, and I'm sure that you've got it in the book, so we're going to say, all right, guys, go buy Rocky's book, but how do you get your employees to help them think like an owner?
I think it really starts with the way you communicate and the vision and view you give them, right? Because I believe that true empowerment is when people discipline themselves. So when I feel like that I'm part of the solution, I'm not part of the problem. So if you think about, one of the things, for example, we began to go into distribution and transportation, logistics, I should say, at UPS, and one of the things was in our healthcare side of the business. And I remember we said, well, how are we going to get to the point where our people feel like owners? They feel like they're part of the solution, and they're just not picking orders, right? Because the problem you get into is if you're just picking orders, well, then 99% on time may be good, but you don't want to be the one customer that doesn't get that one important drug. And so what we did is we started to kind of get our people closer to the customer. So I think that in a small business, getting to think like an owner, you give them an understanding. Okay, here's the project we're going to do. We're going to, let's just say, for example, you're a painting contractor. Okay, this is a house that's a kind of a Victorian house, and this is what's important to our customer. This is what we're trying to accomplish. What are your thoughts? What role how do you see this going? And even though they may look at you funny sometimes, or they may not have a lot of different ideas than you have, especially if you've been with them a long time, you begin to buy them into the process, right? Because it's easy for people to be Monday morning quarterbacks. If you think about employees that just, aren't really engaged or really don't care about the business the way you care about your business, is because they've disengaged, right? They're Monday morning quarterbacks. We could have done it better, or he doesn't, He's got his own way of doing it, or all he cares about is making money. Well, they've kind of disengaged and they don't feel like they own anything. They don't feel like they're part of anything. You got to bring them into feeling like they're part of it. It's hard to do with some people, but if you think about it, most people don't get up in the morning and say, you know what, today I'm going to go and be a bad employee. Right? So they,
yeah, I never thought about that. Yeah, no, I'm going. Yeah, no, it's not on my. Never been high on my agenda list or anything I've ever thought about. Yeah.
But they just may not. They may just not feel. They may not feel like they're part of the process right now. So therefore, it's easy for them to kind of disengage, and easy for them to Monday morning quarterback you. So whatever you can do to bring them in. Hey, let's face it. Ultimately, it's your business. The same way, ultimately, as a leader, you're responsible for the results. But I feel like I get more authority as a leader when I bring my people in, get their thoughts, get kind of get their view. You thank them for that and say, okay, we're going to put that all together. And then the best of all, that's going to be how we go. And it's most likely going to be what you thought of because you know the business, especially as an entrepreneur, but they feel like they're part of that process. And then, when that situation comes up, you look at them and say, well, okay, we all thought this was the right thing to do. What do you think? How are we going to fix this? You always bring it back to them. So I think that's always been a good way for me, at least, and a successful way for me to get people involved.
Cool. Now, I had a question I was going to ask you, but we're talking about leadership, which is, I think, a lost art in a lot of ways. Can you be a good? We'll see. Can you think you can be a good leader in work and not be a good leader at home, or do you think they coincide?
I think what the difference is what you accept as your responsibility. So, for example, when you're at work and let's say you're that excellent leader at work and you're the you're the high performance manager at work, but when you come home, you're not. Let's just say you're the sit on a couch guy or the whatever, and the difference is you haven't accepted that responsibility at home, but you've accepted it at work. So I think it comes down to the responsibility that you accept.
So it's on what we accept. Okay, so that's awesome. I never thought about it that way because I really feel in my own heart that, if you're a leader, and then you need to step up and be the leader in every area of your life. And I think it's and I know it's easy for some people to compartmentalize. Mm-hmm. It's just never been one of those things for me. So if I'm going to do it here, then that's who I am. And I've tried it. In other areas. My wife goes, "You can't do that." I go, "Why?" Because you're the leader. And I said, "But I don't want to be." She said, "It doesn't matter whether you want to be or not. You are." So
that's right.
Yeah. So I said, "Okay." So I'm stuck with this. So, what does it mean to be a leader, especially in the business world? Let's just go there.
Okay. Well, I think sometimes though the mistake that I think is made sometimes is that people think leadership is always about a title. Like, so I got the title of CEO, so I'm got to be the leader. Or I think leadership is not just reserved for people with titles like president or owner or things like that. I think leadership is that, are you a mentor? Are you somebody that has people in your care or responsibility? Parents, teachers. I think teachers are fantastic leaders and probably have some of the biggest leadership responsibilities that are out there. So I think that's the first thing. Because to me, it's funny. I've had some really great titles throughout my career, but the best title is grandpa right now. So that's a great title. When my grandson's name is Nico, when Nico walks in and he smiles at me, I'm done. That's the greatest title in the world, grandpa. Yeah. So, but I think that it starts with understanding that it's not about you. And I think that's what gets leaders in trouble many times. They think it's about them. Think about an owner of a business who's got 2 or 3 employees working for them. And it all becomes, you don't understand, I'm trying to make ends meet, and it's not easy being the owner of a business. Well, those are maybe all true, but you've now made it all about you. And so and in business, it's the same way, right? You don't, here you are, you're running a business unit, and all of a sudden you're trying to explain to people how you don't realize how tough it is to be the guy in charge or a person in charge. Okay, that's great, but it's not about you. It's about us. It's about our ability to work together. It's about once you take it out of the realm of it's about you, and then you realize it's about them, it's about us as a team, things change, right? And that's what makes parenting so great, right? It's not about you, it's about the family.
Yeah.
That's what my dad always taught me. It's not about me as it's about the family. It's about all of us together. It's how we help each other. It's how we treat each other with dignity and respect. And so I think once you take that off of you, it makes it so much easier for you to lead with a better view of things.
Absolutely. That's awesome. So, Rocky, where your book is, I've got it here.
Tighten the lug nuts.
Tighten the lug nuts. I love that.
Yeah.
And how can our listeners get in touch with you?
Well, they can easily find me on the internet, on the web. Now, this is one of those, Dave. So this is one of those life lessons. So when you're going to build your domain, some of these domain names seem really good until you have to tell people to go find you, right? So ours is www. The number 3 and then the word 60 management services. So it sounded really good, but it probably should have just been the numbers 360, but it's not. It's the number 3. It's the word 60. So it's 360managementservices.com. And then from there, you can see a little bit about our business, but we do a lot of training. We do a lot of training workshops. We're working with a couple of universities right now to help build continuing education programs. It's really exciting. And of course, you can easily purchase the book there or through Amazon or Barnes & Noble. So at the very least, I hope people who read the book will really have an enjoyable read and sit down and it'll bring a smile to their face. I think there's some great lessons in there and some great things they can learn. But even if they're, much farther along than I am as a business leader or, in their own personal life, at the very least, there'll be a story in there they like. And listen, those stories are there for anybody to use whenever they want.
They just changed the name to protect the innocent, right?
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Create your own Joe Scafone.
Yeah, everybody's got. That's right. Joe's taken. That's exactly right.
Rocky, thanks so much for being with us and sharing with us. And I know that our listeners will get a great read or listen from today, and because we covered a lot of material. And just thanks for being with us. We really appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate it, Dave. And listen, if that you can contact me through the website as well. If there's a question that you may have or any of your listeners may need a question, an answer to a question, or they're in please, I would look, that's the best part of what I'm doing right now is that you can be helpful to people and you can make a small difference in someone's life. Boy, that's a great feeling. It's a nice way to end the day knowing you did something good for the.
That's awesome. And of course, guys, like always, we'll put everything up in the show notes so you can get a hold of Rocky and contact him, find out how you can buy his book. And so awesome. Have a great weekend and enjoy the weather.
Thanks for joining us for another weekly episode of the Contractor's Secret Weapon podcast with Dave Negri. We would love to hear your comments about this episode, so visit us online at www.contractorsecretweapon.com and let us hear your thoughts. If you are listening via iTunes, please leave us a positive review. The more positive reviews we receive, the more other contractors will benefit from this show. Thank you, and see you next time here on the Contractor's Secret Weapon podcast.